everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It's Francis and Nate. Nate, mid August. How are you guys doing? It's cool today. I almost had to put on long pants today. It was weird.
It's actually really nice today. It's like hotter and more humid than it's been. For a long time it was really cold for summer. But today's absolutely gorgeous. I know it's supposed to rain this afternoon, but like I rode my bike in this morning and it was just like absolutely flawless weather. So I'm in pretty good mood. Got a ton of DIY shit done around the studio yesterday. Like I think in the next 2 weeks, I'll really be closed out on all the projects I promised my coworkers I'd get done. And then I'm going to be working from home and waiting for the baby to show up. So, all good.
What have you been doing around the studio? Are you putting like little spongy things on the corners so the baby doesn't bang her head when she comes into podcasts and stuff?
No, it's so I'm in the process of basically rewiring a bunch of things, both to like solder microphone cables so that we don't have, because like we have kind of a non-standard configuration and it's really annoying and messy having like all of these like mic cables with slack all over the floor. And so in the process of basically I have been soldering new microphone cables, like XLR cables, in order to have like kind of custom termination length for these things so that I can basically secure them with clips under the tables in the room that we use as a studio, like the actual enclosure. So everything will be off the floor. And then in the process, I learned about running 4 XLR cables over a single network cable, an Ethernet cable. And the wiring is not particularly complicated. So I bought one just for mics, but I've got 4 other lines I have to run. They're like kind of weird, non-standard configurations. So I'm actually like building my own. So I'm just, I learned how to solder and I've figured out the wiring diagrams and I'm in the process of connecting a Cat6a termination, like an IDC. I just discovered that I have the wrong IDC punchdown tool for this. So I probably need to buy a new tool. If this next attempt doesn't work, I'm just going to give up for the day on this project. But also like, I installed a bunch of shelves that had been around that we've had the boards for forever, but like we couldn't, no one had gotten around to installing them. So I installed, like 3 in the last 2 weeks. I'm going to rerun some of the network cables, like just so there's not like slack and shit all over the floor. I'm building these, it's a real simple circuit. It's just a volume control, like a potentiometer linked to a headphone knob, and then wired to a jack for a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack.
Look at you! You're nesting. That's nice.
I mean, you could call it that. I'm basically fixing stuff up for the studio because if they do actually start doing video stuff in here, you want to get as much bullshit off the table and off the floor as possible. And part of that is like we've got to kind of streamline what we do. And some of that we could pay someone to do this, but it would just be a lot of money. And in the grand scheme of things, like, it's not that expensive with parts if you know what you're doing. And like when you talk about the actual soldering, the actual like circuitry, it's like 1 + 1 = 2 simple. It's just you have to know how to solder.
Soldering is one of those, like I've done it before. I'm not a big fan of doing it, but it is it's like building a shelf. Like it's very simple and easy to do. And you feel like, not only do you feel accomplished, but like you can look at the fruits of your labor immediately. Like I built the shelf and now I'll put things on the shelf.
Yeah. I mean, I had the boards cut a while ago. There used to be, when we lived in this apartment complex, it was a council estate here in London, our first year here. For a while, there was a lumber yard across the street from us, and they would do planed all round boards for pretty cheap. So I had bought some for our place, and I bought some for the studio, and we've had these boards. And so what I did was, like, obviously I didn't cut and plane. I could have, if you have the tools to do it, but on your own, like it can be kind of like jagged and fucked up looking. But we had the brackets, and what I discovered with this thing was like, I have these heavy-duty hollow wall anchors that I've had great success with. They're called roll plugs in the UK, but they're like a metal hollow wall anchor that you use a setting tool with to kind of, and it full on like spalls out like a bullet behind the fucking drywall, and like it can hold a lot. Like I've used it to hold a dish rack, with 4 points of attachment, and I've never had a problem. And so the thing was that the wall I was attaching them to was like a single sheet of plasterboard and then a cavity and then concrete. So I had to basically hit it until I got to the concrete and then get the SDS drill out and then go through that and then put these anchors in. But what I discovered was that normally you can screw it down almost to the point of when it's done with a screwdriver, like a screwdriver bit on a power drill. But what I was finding with these things was, I don't know what it was, maybe like the my measurements were not quite right. I mean, like it's always a little bit of a catch as catch can thing, but it fucked up a couple of them, and like they lost their grip, and I had to pull them out. So I had like these holes in the wall, and that was annoying. But I'm gonna spackle them today, and they'll be fine because I've got some filler compound, and it's fine. The shelves themselves though are now done, and I mean, it was pretty simple. I just, once I had one where I wanted it, I set the other one up and like, moved the board over to the other bracket. So that would be level 2. And then basically if you just kind of complete that process, you get one contiguous level shelf. And it worked. It looks nice, honestly. We're going to put some speakers on it. We're going to put a little hi-fi stereo on it, storage books there, shit like that. And just like get stuff looking like an actual office and not just like, oh, we emptied out the boxes from the last place in like 2021 and we haven't moved anything ever since. And that's, it's 4 dudes in a fucking studio. That's what it's basically been. So.
Yeah. I just recently rekajiggered everything inside of the pod shack, and I moved the desk, turned the desk around, and I ordered a new monitor because I have somebody who like I might be able to do like local recordings with, but I don't have a space for it. So she and I were talking, and I was talking to my wife about it, and I was like, I think because I can't do it in the house because there's just too many, things that live inside of my house. So moved everything around. I still haven't. I ordered all of those the sound blocking things that I can put up on the walls. I need to do that, but it is a slowly but surely. Who's gonna like left seat, right seat this for you when you end up going to Switzerland and has to like be the person who maintains this?
Well, I have to come back pretty regularly because until I get everything sorted out with healthcare in Switzerland, which is Switzerland doesn't have socialized medicine. I mean, like it's got an American style system. It's just that it's controlled in a way where like it's expensive, but it's not. It's not a system where like you pay for insurance every month and then also like you get they find ways to not cover shit and you get fucked over. Like it's more like the American system than pretty much anywhere else in Europe, but it
works better.
It works like I'm not. I wish they had just socialized medicine, but like every time Switzerland has a referendum to have socialized medicine, they vote against it. According to my friend, they didn't even have buy your own insurance on the exchange until the 90s. It used to be you only got it through your job, which is basically America until the ACA. So at the end of the day, like I really fucking wish that. Well, I'll put it this way. I really wish that it was possible to just go and have everything be seamless, but it won't be. And obviously, like the ADHD meds have made a huge difference in my life, but I can't get those. It's going to be a process to get like seen by a psychiatrist there and get on whatever. And so until that process takes place, I'm going to have to come back like every 2 months to refill my prescription, which I can do. It's not like illegal or anything. It's totally fine. And so I'm just going to stay in the studio.
Yeah, the concept of that sounds so wild, but I know that like traveling to different countries inside of Europe isn't that big of a deal.
Yeah, it's an hour and a half flight. Hour and 15 minutes flight, really.
Right, it's like me flying to not even flying to Florida. It's like me flying to
like Chicago.
Yeah.
Like by the time with takeoff, like taxi, takeoff, landing, taxi, like you're going to basically be in the plane probably around the same amount of time as.
Right.
I think because that's how long it was to fly from Indianapolis to Chicago.
Yeah, it's about the same. Like if I needed a prescription of a deep dish pizza and some bad baseball, I could fly up to
call it that.
Chicago.
Call it that. Yeah, exactly.
All right.
So I'm gonna come back but I mean, ultimately, what I'm doing, like nothing is so complicated. I mean, like as long as I do my homework and do it correctly, like I'm soldering joints on cables that aren't gonna move that much. Like if the thing with the running 4 lines of balanced audio over, I mean, and wiring wise, like it's totally fine. It makes sense. Like people already do it all the time. I'm just building my own, so obviously I don't want it to fucking like not work. As long as it works, like I'm gonna once I have the permanent thing, I'm gonna solder the wire joints and put heat shrink on them, and it's gonna be in like an enclosure case with like a gland at the end of it, and like all that stuff will be like protected. So I just don't see it. I mean, hopefully, like who knows, maybe she'll just fall apart. But I'm hoping that the stuff that I do that would require like the physical stuff, none of it's gonna require maintenance.
Sure.
And the online stuff, like the network infrastructure, I've set it up so that I can access it remotely to handle things. I mean, like obviously some things like I can't plug in unless I'm there, but like I've got it set up in a way where as long as they have internet access, I should be able to log in. And if they don't, like, well, that's a thing with the fucking ISP, isn't it?
Right. Do you still have the wireless the Wi-Fi locks on this one, or is that the last one?
The Wi-Fi locks.
Didn't you have locks that, like, if the Wi-Fi failed, then you wouldn't be able to get in?
Oh, yeah. That was the old place. Yeah, that was our very first studio. And yes, they had, like, an app-based lock system, but when their internet shit out, you couldn't get in. Yeah. I'd totally forgotten about that. I definitely deleted that app off my phone. I don't even remember the name anymore.
Yeah, I don't remember recording entire episodes, but the wireless to get into the house is such a stupid idea that it just kind of stuck with me forever.
Yeah, it really is a dumb idea, like when there's no fail-safe, right?
Yeah, it should fail open, but it doesn't. It fails closed.
Like, I understand it with like a gym, right?
Yeah.
Where like there's people there, and if it's open, then like, you know, they open it, and then like if there's access for members, then the thing is, you know, enabled while the gym is open. But like, it's not as if it's not manned, and if they've closed the gym, like that lock is turned off. But like that being the only way to get in is so stupid. But then again, everything that company, the people who managed that building did was stupid. Like they just made some unbelievably boneheaded financial decisions, and then they somehow managed to go bankrupt being landlords in London.
It's incredible how you can manage to own land and get fucked over. And I say this as
they didn't own it so much as they were renting it on a really favorable lease, but like they managed to run a business with an incredible lease on some really like coveted spaces. They managed to run it into the ground by buying a pub in the middle of fucking nowhere and trying to like guilt trip all of their like co-work space tenants into doing events at the pub. And then as far as I understand it, also like getting a lease on a co-working space in Lisbon, Portugal. Like it was a mess. Everything there was a mess. They one time tried to unclog the sink by dumping sulfuric acid into it and then plunging it with a rubber plunger, and it just melted the plunger and created this horrible like toxic fume stench in the building for 2 days. Like, bro, it was unbelievable.
I mean, a simple Google search. Anyway, enough about terrible landlords. Hopefully when you guys get into Switzerland, you're gonna have to rent there, aren't you? Like, I don't.
Oh God, yeah.
You can't own anything as not a.
Yeah, like we couldn't afford to buy in Geneva basically ever, but also you can't buy residential property in Switzerland unless you're at least a permanent resident, which we wouldn't be eligible for until we had lived there for at least 5 years. And like to get like a family-sized apartment in like the city of Geneva, you're kind of like it's not necessarily going to be luxury housing. It's just that most people rent, and so like stuff is built to be, you know, market rate. But if you wanted to buy, it would probably be around $2 million. So like it's just not a thing that's going to happen.
Well, maybe and maybe not. Patreon.com/hell of a way to die. Help Nate get his fantasy Swiss. I assume everybody lives in various sized chocolate factories or clock factories.
Well, it's very funny because it'd be like, yeah, everything's going to sound so shady, like his apartment in Geneva, Switzerland, where he has a Swiss bank account. And it's like, yeah, it's the bank account I buy fucking groceries with, like, because I live in Switzerland. Yeah, that kind of.
I'm literally, yeah. It's not like having a Delaware LLC and you live in Colorado. Like,
yeah, it's a Delaware LLC because you run like a coffee shop in like Dover, Delaware, or something like that.
Yeah, like you have a Swiss bank account because literally that's where your money is. But
yeah,
also
you live and work in Switzerland. Yeah,
yeah. It helps that the federal government can't see it though.
Yes, they can actually. That's the thing, is that for a long time it was almost impossible as an American citizen to get a bank account in Switzerland because they passed this law called FATCA that forces banks to do disclosure requirements for American account holders, and those disclosures actually violate Swiss privacy law. So the Swiss banks didn't want to deal with all the ways that they would be violating their own national laws by complying with the laws for American customers. So they just wouldn't take American customers. Some of that has changed, but like it genuinely, like, and all that stuff is like meant to, it's supposed to help, you know, stop people from fucking hiding money abroad. But like, it's complete bullshit. All it does is just make it annoying to be an American abroad, because people with actual money, like, they don't really have to hide money that way. Like, there's so many other like Panama Papers ass ways they can hide money. Like, it genuinely, it's stupid.
Yeah, we have Ireland for that now.
Well, yeah, and so does every multinational corporation on planet Earth.
Speaking of, patreon.com/hellofaway. Anyway, hopefully the move works out pretty well for you. And Switzerland is a welcoming, open place. I've heard wonderful things. Do you get a free gun when you get there? Like,
no,
got a lot of guns there, right?
The gun thing isn't really what people think it is. Like, you know,
it's a shame.
Well, people do own guns, and like, if you're a reservist, if you're, you know, done your military service, and then you're like are in the reserves, I think you keep a gun at home, but you don't keep ammunition. And also, like, Switzerland is like a very gun-owning, you know, marksmanship training country, but like they have a really, really low gun crime rate because like the culture around guns is very different, I think, and also just like
Yeah, they're not weird about it. They're not like, I need this to fight off my government. They're like, I
Need this to fight off the Germans or the French or the Italians or the House of Savoy or whoever they think is
right, the
invading them.
Holy See is going to come across the like. No, they're just like, I have a gun. It's nice.
I mean,
I
look,
guess.
Switzerland has a higher gun fatality rate than many European countries for a reason. It's just because you have guns in the same way that Serbia does. Like, but also like countries in the Balkans that have higher gun crime rates still have like they like a sliver of a fraction of America's gun crime rate. So I think in Switzerland, like you periodically hear about things, mostly suicides, sometimes like violent crimes with guns, but like it's not like a country. It's not like a country where you can't own a gun. Like it's pretty easy to own a gun as a citizen. I don't know as a permanent resident. Like if your children are citizens of the country starting from age 10, like their canton gives them like free marksmanship training, whether it's, you know, girl or boy, like it doesn't matter. But and obviously people get, you know, men get drafted into the Swiss military. So like it's just, I don't know, a lot of the gun thing is tied to that too. But like I don't know, they're not. It's not like this is the gun my brothers carried when they died in Afghanistan kind of shit. Like it's just fucking, it's something different. I don't really want to speak on it because I don't know it that well. I just know that like there basically isn't violent gun crime in that country.
There's no Swiss Marine Todd. Well, there should be. We can invent this character.
Grinsley Marine Todd. Yeah, exactly. Just he's going around punching the lib professor for putting his feet on the train seat. Marine Todd leaving really strongly worded, like printed out and laminated fucking complaint letters. That's a whole different vibe. I'm sorry, that's extremely Swiss. We'll talk about it later. But you said you have a story for me.
Yeah. So I have long been a proponent against putting specifically my name on anything military. I always say, like, I remember going in through Fort McCoy, Wisconsin, which is a pimple of a training base in the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin, and not even the main base, not even the main gate, the gate that we had to go in with all of our tactical vehicles was named after a guy, a PFC who died in Afghanistan. And for me, the legacy of my name being on a shitty entry control point on a shitty base in a shitty state is just the most depressing thing I've ever heard. But Nate, you know that the military names ships after entire cities, right?
They sure do, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think happens when when the Navy's like, we don't need this ship anymore? Sometimes the cities are just, they don't really give a shit. But the good people of Sioux City, Iowa, not too happy with the way things turned out for them. This is from the Iowa Public Radio. Sioux City mayor condemns the Navy after it decommissions the USS Sioux City. And I'm going to read this, and you're going to hear a lot of the same things that you will hear a lot of people complain about in the military, especially when it comes to the government and how the government does things. So the United States decommissioned the USS Sioux City in a small ceremony Friday this morning after less than 5 years in service. Sioux City Mayor Bob Scott recalled one of his most memorable days in office, the commissioning ceremony of the USS Sioux City in November 2018. Quote, one of the proudest days of Sioux City. There were all kinds of Sioux City citizens because the community got behind it and did a great job of showing the Navy how proud we were to have a ship named after us. And then this is what the Navy does to us in return, end quote, says Scott. Scott said the Navy fleeced not only his community, but all taxpayers. Quote, I think it's a joke. I mean, they mobilized our community. We went out and raised a lot of money. Scott estimates $1.5 million went towards a christening ceremony for the vessel in November of 2018. A scholarship fund with the majority of from the citizens of Sioux City and surrounding areas. So they set up, they put in a scholarship fund and a christening ceremony to celebrate the boat named after them. And then he goes on, this is unacceptable to spend $350 million knowing that there's supposedly a problem and wasting taxpayers' money. But not only that, selling a community on 30 years worth of commitment to that ship. Scott says the Navy has yet to respond. Quote, and then to have the Navy just throw it in our face. I've lost all confidence and in the way the government does things. I didn't have a lot of confidence to begin with, but this just shows that they really don't give a crap about the local community. These are the Freedom. This is the Freedom class. The USS Sioux City is a Freedom class that was having propulsion problems. This wasn't the zone wall where the engine gets wet and then the boat stops working, but propulsion still very important.
You'd think, probably a big deal, right?
An entire fleet of ships that the Navy built, commissioned, and then just are scrapping after 5 years. And like, as a taxpayer, as a person who can see the bloated military budget, and as somebody, as we have talked about multiple times on this podcast, we don't see any of that money that all goes to defense contractors building F-35s to catch on fire. We don't, or Freedom class ships where the ship
can't go forward unless the wind is blowing and they've tied a bed sheet on top of it. So yeah, like
you'd think like we've already solved these problems. If you can't make it work one way, you can make it work another way. So now that the city of Sioux City, Iowa, which let's be honest, like, you're nowhere near, like, you can't get further away from an ocean than I think Sioux City. So I'm very curious how I'd like to go back and watch the commissioning and see like what kind of, like, did they fly a bunch of people out there? But it is kind of fucked up. But you know what? That's the military. If you get in bed with the military for any reason whatsoever, you got to be ready for them to just completely dick you over. Maybe this guy never joined the army. That's certainly something that you and I know, Nate. That you can't trust them. You can't trust the Navy specifically here. You can't trust the government to not. I don't know. Are you really even getting dicked over? Like,
I mean, at the end of the day, it's like it's just a nice thing. They could have named it like, I don't know, the USS Turn Left at Albuquerque, the USS Apple Pie. Like, they happened to name it after your
Liberty.
town. Yeah, the USS Freedom, the USS Passport Control. Like, at the end of the day, they did you a favor by all this shit. And if you went out and raised all this money for a christening, it's like, that's your own fault. Like, first of all, where in the fuck in Sioux City, Iowa are you going to christen a goddamn ocean-going boat? Did you have to fly the whole town out to fucking christen? Did they bring it, like, in a dry dock? Is such a thing possible? Can they, like, bring it down the Mississippi or something? Like, how did they get it to you? Like, I'm really confused about the logistics. Like, right, hell yeah, we got a Navy boat named after our town. That's cool. But, like, if you're doing a thing for the people in your town to, like, I don't know, get a bottle of whatever kind of, like, alcohol that you're allowed to drink in Sioux City, Iowa, and fucking hitting it against the boat to christen it, like, or maybe maybe they use something non-alcoholic, to keep it modest, like Sam's Club fucking grape juice, whatever it is. Like, you got next to the boat that's gonna go on the ocean, and you're from, like, the most landlocked state in America. I mean, all right. Not really, because Iowa's on the Mississippi, but, like, Iowa is
you can't
pretty fucking landlocked. Yeah, like,
you're not getting a Navy ship up the Mississippi. Like, it's just
I have no concept of the Mississippi other than, like, crossing over literally in St. Louis. Like, I genuinely don't know. I imagine the displacement is just not possible, even if it's like a literal ship. But, like, I don't know what kind of boat this is.
The locks and dams north of Memphis, I think, and going upwards to Minneapolis. No, you're not getting a combat ship up there. So the people of Sioux City, maybe they could have floated down and christened this down in the Gulf, but
they
more
took
than
the
likely
whole town tubing for like 2 weeks down the river.
I mean, Sioux City, it's like what, 50, 60 people or so?
Like when Grimes and her boyfriend in college got fucking arrested for animal abuse because they tried to build a houseboat with shit from Lowe's full of like ducks and chickens, and the boat immediately like ran aground. They were going to sail down the Mississippi because they said they were inspired by either Huck Finn or like a Dostoevsky short story. I'm not making this up. Claire Boucher, duck cruelty houseboat. Just Google that. You'll find the story. Genuinely, it's like, I don't know how this is going to work, but it feels as though these people have made a problem, and now they're going to complain about Joe Biden's woke Navy when it's like, guys, you should have just taken the W that someone was acknowledging Sioux City, Iowa. Like, and I say this as someone from fucking Carmel, Indiana, a place only ever acknowledged for being full of a million roundabouts by the most annoying people online who are like, this is urbanism. And it's like, no, it's not. It's like car-centric mall shit. Or talk about the fact that it's insanely racist as a white flight town. Yes, that's true, and it sucks. That's why I never go back. But like, if they made the USS Carmel, Indiana, I'd be like, sweet, we've made it in the world. Like, then that boat is then going to be sunk in a very racist incident, forever cementing Carmel's legacy.
There's speaking of boats named after places, I lived in a neighborhood in St. Louis called Carondelet, and there was a I don't know if it was a USS Carondelet, but it was a Civil War era ship. It was a Union boat.
What is the words being said there? Like, I feel like you're saying something in English that I should know, and yet I don't know any of those.
Carondelet.
Carondelet? Like Coron, like crown, C-O-U-R...
C-A-R-O-N-D-E-L-E-T. It is a very southern neighborhood in South City.
I have never heard those words ever in my... All right, you know what? I'll take the L on this one. Fine.
Very you know what? It's one of the...
It's like 16th century French. It's like named after something...
Yeah, it's a very obscure French word. But there is a ship that was named after the Carondelet. Obviously, not still around Civil War era, but there is... The first kindergarten west of the Mississippi is in Carondelet. So that has been turned into a historical society, and they have like a recreation of the boat. But as somebody from St. Louis, if the Navy named a ship after St. Louis and then decommissioned it, I don't think I'd ever notice because...
Well, I mean, we have the USS Indianapolis, famous for being like how you get eaten by a shark. So it's like, at the end of the day, this is just what happens. Like, when the Navy takes your town name, you lose all control. Maybe it's going to be assigned to a boat that was like the world's biggest tax dodge by guys in Arlington, Virginia. And like, genuinely, when you turn the engine on in the water, it's like, oh, salt water, it fucking just shuts down. Like, it's possible.
Yeah. Would you rather be the fucking USS Arizona, which has like a permanent memorial floated over it because it got sunk during Pearl Harbor and killed a bunch of people? Like,
yeah, it's like it was the place where like 1,000 dudes got lit on fire. Like, yeah, you basically you lose control of what the name is going to be associated with once it gets put on a thing. You know, I'm sure that there are lots of people out there who absolutely would have loved to have had a boat called the Edmund Fitzgerald. Problem is that there was this one, and then a guy wrote a song about it, and some shit happened, and as a result, you don't really want to name your boat the Edmund Fitzgerald just because, like, you kind of, you know, that association is there forever.
You know, I will say, though, that there's some ships that maybe you can get away with that because there are at least 3 HMS captains, and one of them sunk for stupid reasons. I did a whole, well, there's your problem article on it, or episode on it, because it was the first ship to have turret guns, and they put the turret guns up way high, and then the whole thing fucking tipped over and killed 500 people on board. But they still kept naming things captain. I guess Edmund Fitzgerald, we're probably going to need another, like, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 decades before we can get to that one. But
because the Edmund Fitzgerald sank in like I think like the 70s, like maybe the 60s. Like it's not that long ago that it happened. But also, like, you're not gonna. I mean, you wouldn't name a boat the Titanic unless it was meant to be a joke.
Yeah. There's some words that are completely out these days.
But Olympic or Britannic, you could probably name it. I mean, I think the Britannic sank also, but. One of them sank in World War I. The other one sank when it was repurposed. The other one, like, if I remember correctly, survived both wars and then was either scuttled or sank in like the Mediterranean. But all 3 of the White Star Line, like the big ones, sank eventually, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and one of them was actually used to like ram other ships in World War I. It's like, no, it's fine. Just don't hit icebergs, and you'll be all right.
Can you imagine if that was your job? Germans. You got fucking drafted, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna be in the Navy," and like whatever it is, like, "Well, I'm gonna be doing Navy stuff," and it's like, "Yeah, your job is to basically like play bumper cars in the middle of the ocean." I mean, I would be kind of disappointed if I had been drafted and that was like my 1910s MOS.
But you're at least on like an ocean liner, so I'm sure the living conditions are probably a little bit. I mean,
nicer. Famously, the ocean like the open ocean, not a dangerous place to be in World Wars I or II,
or any time. Look, even before we invented guns, like the Greeks got on boats and just like ran into each other and then jumped onto each other's boats and stabbed one another. Like the oceans have always been battlefields, and there's a reason I joined the fucking army because fuck that ocean nonsense.
Didn't want be on an oceanic battlefield. Yeah, me neither. I mean, honestly, like I don't like being wet and cold, and it feels like that's just like being a sailor in general.
I feel it's more being a coastie. Like it feels like the Coast Guard is always somewhere where it's wet and cold and miserable.
Yeah, I mean, in the Navy, you could just ostensibly be assigned to like some very shore job in like a really nice post because the Navy always has bases in nice places, whereas the Army has like two bases in nice places, then you can't go there because like it's West Point lieutenants and fucking like lifer NCOs who are spending all their time there.
Well, the benefit that you get for being in the Navy is you got to be near water, so you might as well be near something nice. But the Army, like, we're constantly having to like march around and drive tanks and blow shit up, so that, you know, very much just go in the middle of nowhere and do that stuff. Don't do it around anybody. I always like to see the pictures of like Marines practicing marksmanship on Navy ships because they're just shooting into the ocean. I know, for some reason it feels very freeing to me.
You know, it's funny though, because I mean, it really is like your mileage may vary, and other people, you know, might find something redeeming about a place you dislike. Because I've never met anybody who liked Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, except one guy I knew in Korea who was half Korean, born and raised in Korea, but his dad was in the Army. He enlisted in the U.S. Army, and he was really into bow hunting deer. And he was just like, Fort Leonard Wood was the best place for that of anywhere I spent time in the military. He's like, I could basically go out almost every weekend. I mean, obviously in the season, but you know what I mean? Like, he's like, there's just so much land no one cares about on that base. You can just go hunting. And basically you have no competition because like most soldiers who are there, it's like, I fucking hate this post. I don't want to do anything. And yeah, he said it was great.
Yeah, Missouri is very much like Alaska, that like a very certain type of person is going to really enjoy it, but it's not going to be the majority of people. Because southern Missouri is all mountains, but it's not like Rockies or Appalachian. It's the Ozarks, so it's incredibly old, and which means like you don't get the beautiful vistas of the Rocky Mountains, but it's still shitty to like try to farm or do anything on. So you can't really do anything. So it's all forested. So yeah, if you want to go hunt, if you want to go like, if you ever just like, I really wish that I could walk in one direction and not see anybody for like 5 hours, Missouri's the perfect place for that because you can do that almost in any direction, especially out of Leonard Wood. But I will say Leonard Wood's got good, they have good museums. And if you're a gigantic fucking nerd like me who loves a good military museum, they've got chemical, MP, and engineer museums all there that are really, really well done. They poured some millions into those ones. They're pretty good.
I don't really know anything about Fort Leonard Wood, to be honest with you. Like, I've driven past it. I remember driving, like, when I was driving to Fort Benning from Alaska and I had to go through Missouri. I remember seeing the exits, and it just looked like a hotter part of the Midwest than where I'm from. That's all I can say. And, like, not trying to be a dickhead about it. I genuinely, like, that's just my impression was, yeah, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. It looks hot and sweaty here. And
it is
kind of in the middle of nowhere.
It is. Yeah, you would think, like, wow, it would be probably more humid the closer to the rivers that you would get, but no, somehow Fort Leonard Wood manages to be the most humid part of Missouri. I will say, though, if you do visit, I would never suggest like having to spend multiple years in Fort Leonard Wood because it is far away from anywhere. Like, living in Missouri in general is, not recommended, but especially in the middle of nowhere in Missouri. However, you do have Uranus, Missouri, right outside, which is
you've told me the fudge factory and so on and so forth. Yeah, is
the
that
world's
like the
largest
one thing,
belt buckle.
The one thing you can do if you're at Fort Leonard Wood is go to like the Uranus fudge factory or whatever. Like that's close.
You can just make a bunch of ass jokes for a while and then be done. That's it. That's all you have. You have ass jokes. You'll go touch the chunk of the Berlin Wall they have. You go through the museums, and then you're there for another 3 years, I guess.
It's also funny to imagine like salty old NCOs who were like we're privates who hated Fort Leonard Wood, just being like, yeah, actually that was good enough for us. We didn't complain, but now the military is woke, and it's like, no, everyone hated it. Like, I'm sure if I go back and like you peel away the paint and find the graffiti and the shitters and the like on different ranges of Fort Leonard Wood from like 1989, it's just privates being like, I hate this place. When can I ETS, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, that's the thing I've noticed with the military is that people really love to romanticize the experience in retrospect. And it's like, no, when you were privates, lieutenants, sergeants, captains, whatever, you all hated it too.
Yeah, you complained. And when you get out, you start to reminisce and you think, man, that sure was fun, but it wasn't. And you know how we know it's not fun is because you're not doing it now. You're not like, that was fun, I need to do more of that shit, I'm going to get back to the military. Of course not, because deep down that shit sucks. And nobody wants to. I don't camp. Like, I don't camp because the Army made me camp, and I didn't like doing that kind of stuff. So I don't do those things outside of the military because I bitched about having to do them inside of the military. I did not join combat arms for a fucking reason, and it was because I didn't want to do all that Army bullshit. And then on the few occasions they made me do Army bullshit, I complained a lot. So, but let me say, I complained as much as anybody else did.
I went combat arms because I actually thought it would be interesting and I would enjoy it. And I mean, like, well, I mean, maybe. I mean, if I'm being honest, but like, because there's like, yeah, all the fucking dudes in my family had been infantry. Well, I mean, like, my dad was, my granddad was. On my dad's brothers, I think one was like a signal corps officer and the other was an engineer officer. But like, I don't know, just there was a lot of people being like, yeah, if you're gonna be in the Army, you might as well just be infantry. Like, it's sort of the Army, like the real experience.
The real Army.
And I mean, also, like, I liked the stuff we did in training. Like, I actually, because there's stuff I'd never done before, and like, I actually wound up being pretty good at land nav, for example. Like, I wound up really enjoying it. It's just that then there's the other stuff that comes along with it. And then there's the, you know, even if you're not deployed to combat, there's the orthopedic injuries and the no control over your life and getting smoked at 8 a.m. because someone in a different company got a DUI or something. Like, just fucking that. Like, no autonomy, no real normalcy. That's where I like, yeah, at a certain point, I was like, even if I am good at the actual, and I wasn't good at everything. There's some things I was really bad at, I'm not going to lie. I did get better at some, but like, nah, I think that like, there were just certain things I sucked at, and that, you know, I can pretend to have been fucking super soldier. But there were a lot of things I was good at too, and I did actually enjoy them for a time. You know, just, yeah, and after a certain point, I was like, oh, there's literally no job training skills in this shit. This just sucks. And everything they say about how this is going to be good for whatever is a lie. Like, no, get out while you can. And it turns out when you can for me was 7 years. So, because that was a contract I signed because I was an idiot. And I signed a 7-year contract in college without having spent a day on active duty. I was a moron, and I paid for it for 7 years.
Yeah, if you're going to join, enlist at the age of 19 for 4 years and then get the fuck out while you're still young enough to kind of start over. Because if you don't, then you end up being one of those people who's in the military until they're 32 and saying like, well, shit.
Yeah, I mean, the advice of our show is always don't enlist. I definitely think that like there are degrees of you are setting yourself up for failure that you can kind of assess. If you decide you are going to, like, then obviously, you know, I think the best thing I can say is that if you decided that's what you're going to do, then you might as well get an MOS that is in fact going to let you do a job on the outside. Don't be swayed by the romantic notions of being a badass, because like unless you really want, what you want is I want to carry heavy shit on my back and get really bad blisters and get yelled at and then have to sing songs about we conquer the mountains and the valleys, we train in the winter's bitter cold, Alaska soldiers, Arctic warriors, centuries of the North, that kind of shit. Like songs that sound like they were written in like 1930. Unless you really want that, get an MOS that's going to give you a job, or don't join the military, which is what we have been saying for 7 years. You
can always spend like $12,000 to join one of those like Facebook boot camps where a man with a beard will ride a hoverboard around smoking a cigar and screaming at you while you like roll around on some rocks.
That sounds like my Robin Sage experience when we were fucking role players, like in the very beginning of the Q course, and like we were basically tasked out to like random fucking rednecks whose land they were training on. I told you that, haven't I? About the fucking guy, the guy in the rascal scooter making us dig a ditch.
No.
I never told you that story?
That does not sound familiar.
All right. I get this mixed up sometimes because like I've told Milo a bunch of stories and like he remembers every detail and loves like bringing them up. So when you're in the Special Forces course, when I went through, once you've been selected and you actually like you PCS to Fort Bragg and you start the course, the first thing they made us do was basically like a bunch of in-processing and a couple of tests, like physical tests, swim tests, etc. And then we had to go out to the field to be role players for the candidates who were at the very end of the course doing Robin Sage. So like Robin Sage is like this final exercise. And it's been going on for so long that like the Special Forces school like managed it before the days of the mega money hose from the government where like they would just pay contractors out the ass to do stuff. Like they just basically do it, a lot of it, with both like Special Forces, like veterans, and then just like local people who want to help. And so like the person sitting at your point on the land nav course in selection might be an SF veteran, might just be like a fucking random dude from North Carolina who just got invited to do it, like people that live there. Similarly, like in Robin Sage, there's this whole area like where they're out doing training, and a lot of that is like land that's just owned by local people. And like they just agree to I mean, the military pays them, but like this has been a thing that's been going on for a while. They just agree to let them use their land. And in our case, we got dropped on this guy's complex in fucking somewhere central North Carolina. And it was like the family owned the land, and like multiple generations of family had different houses, and they all lived on the land. And then they had like a junkyard they ran where people could come and dump trash for a fee. They sold like fill dirt. The sign said free dirt, and it was spelled it was free dirt. They gave away free dirt, and it says DIRTE. Anyway, so this guy was like,
that's the organic version.
Yeah, it's like it was, and so we basically like we got put in this thing, and then they basically like after day 2, they were like, yeah, we kind of don't want the captains as role players, and we're like, why? And they're like, well, you guys just like you're gonna help like even like if you don't want to, you try not to. Like you guys just know too much about being in the military, and so like
you guys are too good at being troops.
You're gonna help these guys out too much. So like we don't want to have you be G-men, like the insurgents that the candidates have to train, because like yeah, we'd rather just have it be like privates and like what they call 18 X-rays, like people who enlist to be Green Berets. So like was like we'll use you on some like direct action ones where everyone dies at the end, but like we don't want you to be G-men. So we just had to sit and do nothing on this like redneck compound for 3 weeks. And like maybe 3 times a week we'd get called out to go do missions, and they were fun, but by and large like it was me and like 6 other captains living in this like clapboard like a plywood bee hut on this guy's junkyard for 3 weeks. And it would get too hot to do anything inside after like 9 a.m. because it was middle of summer. So we would like work out, hang out under the fucking trees, go inside like the talk, which was like this family's like backyard church, and it was like probably enough to seat like 100 people. Had like a world-class fucking barbecue smoker, but I'm not gonna sound too much like a dickhead, but like it definitely seemed like some real fucking this is a culture I've never encountered kind of thing in my life.
Yeah, it sounds very like it sounds very there's probably 10 to 20,000 rounds of ammunition somewhere around here.
Yeah, and there was
when you say personal backyard church, that puts up a lot of alarm bells for me.
There was like a thing with like they had a old water jug that you could donate money in when they had like the backyard church services or whatever, and it says give if you won't to, and it was spelled WONT''. Like it was very, very, yeah. And there was like a, like Grandpa's rules, like 12 aphorisms of Grandpa's rules, and none of them made any sense. Like they just weren't sentences. Like none of them made any sense at all. Trying to parse them. Like it was like I've used this expression a lot, but like this metaphor. But it's like the Ray Bradbury story that the fucking episode of The Simpsons was based on, where like they go back in time to kill the T-Rexes that like the hunters get to kill the T-Rexes that were always going to die anyway, but they can't like step off the path because if they kill even a butterfly, like it might fully just fucking like ruin history, ruin the human development. And I think in the story like they fuck something up and they go back and like the world is like this fascist hellhole, but also like they speak English, but it's weird English. It's completely fucked up because like it's just evolved differently. Like that's how I feel sometimes when I encounter these things. I'm like, what dimension am I in? So getting the story though. So like we didn't really have anything to do. Like we'd work out every morning, sometimes twice a day. And like the talk, I don't think they had air conditioning, but they had fans. It was like, it was cooler in there. So we'd hang out, but there was literally nothing to do besides like smoke, work out, drink coffee, drink water, pee. And like, once they let us shower in like the big house, like the owner's house, but the owner would also come out and like he wanted us to do stuff for him, which is fine, whatever he has to do, so we'll do it. And one time he wanted us to dig a ditch for a pipe to like run a sewer line for a toilet because like they had a toilet in the backyard church, but like it seemed as though like it wasn't draining correctly, and like I seem to recall something like it just wasn't even hooked up to plumbing. Anyway, problems. So the cadre were like, yeah, sure, you can use our candidates. So, we went out there.
These captains are not doing anything.
And so we went out and dug a ditch for this pipe to go out to the sewer pipe or the septic tank or whatever. And this guy wanted to supervise. So we had to 4 guys had to come out and carry him on his fucking rascal scooter onto the grass so he could supervise. And he was like unintelligible, like worse than fucking Boomhauer unintelligible. And then he was happy with the work, even though he yelled at us the whole time as we were digging. He was happy enough with the work that he wanted his wife to go down to the Bojangles in the town that near where they lived and get us like some food. Except this is how he said it: "Woman, get on down there and get them boy in a bow box." And we're like, "What?" "Woman, get on down there and get these boy in a bow box." And it was like, "Oh, what the fuck did you just? All right." And then like
go on down and get them a bow box. I got
45
it.
minutes later, a woman showed up with a bunch of Bojangles for us and like gallons of sweet tea. So yeah, that's how I spent fucking Robin Sage, was that. I read all of Infinite Jest. I read all of A Bright Shining Lie. I read all of The Brothers Karamazov. Because I was just so fucking bored. Like, oh my God, dude. And that is how I like spent a month being paid as a captain when I was assigned to Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Just out in the middle of nowhere, huh?
In the fucking redneck backyard church private dump, like junkyard dump, the woods full of abandoned boats. I'm not joking. Just like the most fucking weird, working out in a gym we made out of like broken cinder blocks and like rubber stretch bands. We made like a bench out of like an old was it like broomstick and just like tied fucking cinder blocks to it. Like
how did this man finance himself?
I have no idea. At some point they owned this land in the middle of fucking nowhere in North Carolina, and whatever the family compound extended clan did, they made enough money to build houses. And so when son 5 wanted to have his family home on the compound, he just built it because they had enough land to do it. I have genuinely no idea. I mean, they sold dirt. They let you dump $20 a truckload. You could dump trash on their property. And they had, I guess, free dirt. I can't remember if it was free dirt or was dirt was $20. I can't remember. But it was dirt was spelled with DIRTE. That I do remember.
The important thing is it was misspelled. I wonder how much the military pays them to just like dump soldiers onto their land on occasion to run around
to be like corvée labor to fucking dig a ditch for a goddamn, be paid in bow boxes and nothing else.
Well, the 13th Amendment didn't completely outlaw slavery. We know that.
By joining the military, you basically make yourself exempt from that shit. I've seen people get hard labor where, like, literally they had to break rocks all day. It was the stupidest. I've told this story too, but like in Korea, they wanted to make a show of punishing this soldier who had fucked up a bunch, and so they made him break rocks, and then like our talk flooded because like it was on an area where like water would run down, and I was like, gee, if only we had this free labor all day, every day for 2 weeks of a guy who could have been filling sandbags. Whoops, y'all had to fucking make him break rocks for no reason. Like, anyway.
All right, Nate, do you have a hey dad for us for today? We'll go ahead and wrap up.
Yeah, I do. So let's try to knock out 2 into quick ones.
All right.
First one is, hey dads, how do I make the most home out of rented living spaces? It feels like I'm moving from one apartment to the next every year, and putting in work just to undo it every few months is frustrating. Any tips on dealing with this? I have a lot of experience with this because I've never owned a home.
I was gonna say it's been more than I've owned for the last like 13 years. So I haven't rented since I was 26. So hit me, Nate. What you got?
So I would say off the top, like, you got to be good enough at doing things like spackling, sanding, and painting to make it plausible that like nothing was there in the first place. If your landlords are going to like take your deposit, like obviously it's almost guaranteed they're going to try to fuck you out of your deposit, but you can minimize the chances if you know how to like do the work to cover stuff up. And then I would say for me, shelves, like get good brackets and like a decent bit of wood, like a wood shelf thing, like preferably like a hardwood shelf, like cut to a size. And even if you don't have like the time to do crazy shit with it, like you can sand it and stain it and things like that, or get it from someone who does that. You find people on Etsy that will sell you kits. I'll hook you up with it if you want. There are these people in Lithuania that make brackets, really good heavy-duty shelf brackets. You can buy them in America. Shipping's not too bad. They'll include a bar of Lithuanian chocolate with every order, I swear to God. It's not necessarily good, but it's like, wow, it's a bar of chocolate from Lithuania. I never had that before. So that's a thing. I would say shelves. Shelves also can help too, because things like putting small pictures and things like that up, that then is, you have whatever the points of attachment are to install the shelves, but you don't necessarily have to worry about like then covering up nail holes and things like that, depending on how annoying your landlord is. I think though, like framed pictures, things like that. Plants, good, but can be bad too if they're just kind of a pain to keep alive, depending on how into that you are and how conducive a space you have. Like my apartment in New York just didn't get enough direct sunlight during most of the year to be able to keep most plants alive that required it. Managed to keep a peace lily alive for like a year or so, but everything else just immediately died. I think for me, the last thing I'd say with making the space feel like home is I try to buy the stuff that I want when it comes to things like lamps, furnishings, things that are small. with the expectation that like I know the dimensions that are going to be different in every new place, but that I'm hoping I can make it fit okay. And you're more likely to be able to make stuff fit if you aim on the smaller side. I would also say that doing things like going to Goodwill, if you know what you're looking for, or looking on eBay, Etsy, etc., like stuff that can be refinished if you're into that. Like, look, I spent a lot of work right before school started, my junior year of college, sanding and staining some wood veneer furniture. Like, it wasn't even like actual wood furniture, it just had veneers. But like, I took this kind of piece of shit stuff and made it look more like what I wanted it to look like. And I was super, super proud of it. I had some furniture my dad had just built out of like 2x4s, and I like sanded it and painted it and stained it, and like, so it had like a gloss wood stain on top and like a white paint. I did all that myself, and like, I think I gave that shelf to my brother when he first moved back to America. But I mean, it wasn't exactly the world's most premium prestige furniture, but it always felt like home in a way because it was something that I had done. And I mean, like, you got to realize, whatever I say about DIY stuff, like, don't take it like I'm some kind of an expert. I was always like a guy who doesn't know how to use a screwdriver when I was young. And I learned by kind of wanting to do it myself and just practicing it and fucking it up. But like, I don't know, with YouTube, it's a lot easier to learn and kind of like take it a step at a time. And I think that you'll feel a sense of accomplishment. And I also think that the reason I bring this up is that like, if you're staining like a small cabinet thing like that for an apartment, that's a thing that can go with you. That's not going to like only fit in this one space you have in this one apartment. Like, I would say start on smaller things, like, but stuff that you can kind of rebuild that's yours. And I think the more that you personalize it, the more it's like stuff you kind of personally invested in, the more, if you know people who can do it for you, can pay them, like people are in your life who can do this stuff well, like things like that. Like, I may have to get rid of a lot of our like big furniture when we move to Switzerland, but I don't really care that much as long as I keep the stuff that like my dad made for me and stuff that me and Cynthia like bought together that we both, that matters to us. The stuff from before doesn't really matter to me anymore. And so I think like that, I think that personal connection, you putting a little bit of effort in, like kind of like putting a little elbow grease in to kind of make it the way you want it. I actually think that's a way to make it seem more like yours, and therefore more like an artifact of home, and therefore like a thing that travels with you that makes you feel more at home.
Yeah. I can definitely see, like, when I was moving around a bit more, having this is my dresser and my lamp setup, and this goes with me everywhere, which I don't have anymore because now I own, and I'm not 23 anymore. But yeah, having those little things that you take with you, that always, like, this is what defines where I belong, are these things that I have that come with me. I will also suggest command hooks. Command hooks are great. They don't damage your wall. They're sticky. They hold up all your art. And that way, when you got to pull them down, you don't have to deal with spackling afterwards. Although there is this great thing that Lowe's has now, which I'm sure other hardware stores have, which is like a whole spackle set in one squeezy tube. Like, it's got the spackle, you squeeze it out, and then because it's a tube, it's got like a flat, like a toothpaste tube. So it's got that flat end at the back end of it that you can kind of flatten it out, and then the cap that you screw onto it has a little buff pad on it. So once it dries off, you can buff it down too. So if you do have some holes, grab one of those and fill them in. But definitely get command hooks. Put your art up. Put the things the things that I guess make you feel at home on your walls, because that's really the only thing that you can change in an apartment like that.
Yeah, I really think that's the case. All right, so the other one I think is actually one we can both give a lot of information on or responses to. Have you ever thought about what you would say or do if your son or daughter came out to you as LGBT+? Also, would you provide subtle encouragement to your son or daughter if you suspected they were LGBT+, but still in the closet, or allow them to come out on their own terms? Would you do anything to nurture that aspect in their life?
I think the most important thing to do, especially now that my daughter is 8 and all the time up to there, is being LGBTQ is not a thing that you have to hide or be different or feel like you have to keep from anybody. And I know that, like, outside societal pressures and all that stuff, we are very open and inclusive and nurturing of those things. And we tell her, like, look, you can love whoever you want, boy or girl, it doesn't matter. It's just whatever makes you happy. So like, obviously if my daughter came out as LGBT, obviously we have no problem with it. I have other non-binary people in my family that, the family is all very accepting. If she said, "Hey, I'm gay," I'm like, all right, I hope that who you date is not an asshole, regardless of, what gender they might define as. So
I'm happy that you know that about yourself and you feel comfortable telling me that. Like, I'm really, really happy. That's how I would feel.
Yeah.
And when I say like encourage it, I mean, I think the thing about it is that like I've known people who were gay who like weren't yet out to their parents, and like their parents kind of suspected, and they kind of made it like uncomfortably obvious that they were trying to be like, oh, we're okay with it, but like try to like force that conversation, and that always seemed really, really awkward. And so I wouldn't want to make them feel as though, it was like always on my mind that like there was a thing that was like all I thought of with them. It's like I'd hope that they wouldn't, feel obligated to be in the closet. I would hope that they would, feel comfortable, and that they know that I just want them to be good people and spend time with good people, and, put good things out in the world. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, not that it's important because it's who you are. And it's important that you feel that you can say that, like you have the right to, you don't have to hide who you are. But I think at the end of the day, like, there's a lot of things that are, to me, I think are important, and sort of how I'd encourage my daughter to live her life, that it doesn't really matter if you're gay or you're straight, if you're cis or you're trans, if you're non-binary, if you're, asexual, whatever. Like, and I don't say whatever dismissively. It's like, I can't name everything, I don't know everything. I don't know enough about stuff, but whatever it is that she identifies as long as it's not like, a thing that's like victimizing people, then it's fine. Like, it's great. Like, it's great that you know yourself and that you trust me and you feel comfortable telling me. And that's just how I go about it. And then it's like, and also you do the dishes, please, do your chores. Like, it's not really, I mean, there's some considerations too. I think that like, as regards, I don't think that people have to like surveil their kids, but like I do think that, obviously there's this assumption that when, kids are teenagers, that like if your, parents are like, well, I don't want to like encourage them to, have sex kind of like here and, what's the right word? Kind of indiscriminately, like without, like obviously like you want them to have safe sex, but also you don't want them to just be like, kind of being in a situation where they're kind of like prone to being taken advantage of, you know what I mean? Or like, and there's this notion, it's outdated, of course, but there's this notion, it's like, oh, well, like if it's boys hanging out with boys or girls hanging out with girls, like it's fine, then at least like they're not like, they're like not going to get pregnant or whatever. And it's like, right, they're not going to get pregnant, but that doesn't mean they're not fucking. And it's like, and then like, so obviously that does change things. I remember reading stories about this with parents talking about like, their sons coming out as gay and then being mad they couldn't be behind closed doors with their boyfriends. They're like, well, why would I fucking let you do that if it was your girlfriend? Like, it's no different. And
right,
it's like,
you should have stayed in the closet if you want to get handsy with your boyfriend.
Yeah, I don't know. I never would have suspected. I would have thought y'all are playing fucking WrestleMania and just laughing a lot.
Yeah. I thought you guys were just practicing wrestling moves on each other.
But yeah, like it's just one of those things where I think that the things that are really important are not going to be. It's not as if those don't apply, even if you're if you're not cisgender or you're not heterosexual. And so at the end of the day, like I just hope that she knows herself well enough to feel like she can tell us and she trusts us, and that like that that she's a good person and she kind of puts out good energy to people, and the people she associates with are too. That's all I can hope for. I mean, like really, like everything else, it's like everything else is probably going to sound insanely dated and hung up and like revealing of my own neuroses. And I guess like I always wanted to be a parent, but I don't really have any expectations of like how my kids got to be. I really don't. And maybe that's the famous last words, but like I don't know.
Just no, that's exactly like how you should. I think a problem that a lot of parents have is they look at their kid and then they immediately like imagine all of these things. They just put a lot of things on the kid immediately.
Oh, it's like my grandparents putting my brother in a future West Point cadet onesie when he was an infant. Like, let me tell you, nothing could be further than the fucking truth. No prediction has ever been less accurate than that one.
Right. And some parents have those things, but if you go into parenting with, just like being this child is their own person. They will eventually grow up to be their own person. They're going to be different than me, and that's okay. And there's no...
I have to help them figure out who they're going to be and like help them express that.
Because like the child that I have now is not the child that I thought I was going to have a month after she was born. obviously. Like, a whole personality has sprung up since then. She has her own people that she likes to hang out with. She has music that she likes to listen to that is not the shit that I want to listen to. She's turned into her own person. So my only, as you said, my only concern is that, like, are the people you're hanging out with good for you? Like, is the person you're loving, do they love you? Like, or do they care about you? Are you at least like I don't ever want to be those, like, meeting my daughter's, paramours at the front with the shotgun or anything like that.
There's a Facebook group about, like, it seems like you're incestuously protective of your daughter's virginity, but okay.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't ever want to, I don't ever want to put that kind of feeling across. I do just want it to be like, look, respect yourself and the people around you, and you'll probably be fine. This is not to say you're not going to have hangups, you're not going to have heartbreaks, you're not going to have somebody who's going to fuck you up in some way or another, because we all do, and we all have to go through it eventually. But you come out on the other side pretty well. Yeah,
I mean, who cares? That's the thing. It's not who cares, like, dismissive of it. It's more like who cares in the sense that, like, some people are gay. Some people are gay. Yeah, like it genuinely just it's fine. Like I there are some concerns that I would have in terms of just knowing that, like, life can be a lot harder and more difficult in many ways, and that, like, I'd want to, like, kind of be there for her, but in terms of how I'd see her and how I'd treat her, it wouldn't change anything at all.
Nope. All right, Nate. Well, I think it's a good place to leave it.
Yeah, it's a good place to end it. And thank you for being listeners. Thank you for tolerating our stories and our reactions. If you want more of us, there's patreon.com/hellofawaytodie, and $5 a month gets you everything all the way back to the beginning of 2017. So 6 whole years of bonus content, pretty decently well produced, because I've been fucking doing the audio for a while, and so has Tom. All available to you. $10 a month. You get once a quarter. You'll get a drop box, a loot box of swag from Francis, like patches, pins, stickers, etc.
Yeah, just got those patches in yesterday. So those will be going out, if not the end of the week, then the beginning of next week.
Yeah, so those are all available. And we also have a YouTube channel, and Francis does his own YouTube videos on there periodically. And we post the episode to the free episodes to the YouTube. So that's all available. And follow us on Twitter. I'm at In These Deserts. Francis is at Army Strang. I don't basically post it all anymore, but fucking who cares? Follow me on Blue Sky, or don't, because it sucks. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.